The sun had barely risen over Fort Bragg when Specialist Emily Carter tightened her boots and joined her unit on the training field. It was supposed to be another routine exercise, a joint drill between Delta Force operators and support personnel to simulate a combat rescue. Emily, one of the few female combat medics in the program, had earned her place through raw grit and unshakable discipline. But for some in the unit, her presence was still a challenge to their outdated egos. The drill began with high-intensity smoke grenades, simulated gunfire, and full-contact maneuvers. When Emily outperformed to senior sergeants in a close-quarters takedown, their pride snapped. What started as a mock capture turned ugly. They shoved her to the ground, restrained her roughly, and made comments no soldier should ever hear. The other recruits froze. Nobody dared to step in. To them, it was just training, but to Emily, it was humiliation and violence disguised as discipline. She kept her composure, though her hands trembled with fury. Unknown to everyone, the entire event was being monitored from the command tower, and Delta Commander Colonel James Harlow was watching every second. Colonel Harlow had served over 20 years in special operations. He'd seen the best and worst of men under pressure, but nothing could have prepared him for what he saw on the training monitor that morning. Without a word, he left the command post, got into a Humvee, and drove straight to the training field. The soldiers froze when they saw his insignia, the Delta patch gleaming under the sun. The air went still as he stepped out, eyes burning like steel. "Which one of you thinks you're tough enough to humiliate a fellow soldier?" he barked. No one spoke. Harlow turned to Emily, whose uniform was covered in dust and bruises. "Specialist, did they lay hands on you?" She hesitated. She'd been taught never to complain, to survive quietly. But then she looked at the men who had laughed moments earlier. "Yes, sir, they did. That was all it took." The colonel's jaw tightened. "You three, front and center. Now." His voice carried the kind of authority that silenced even the wind. The offenders stepped forward, suddenly realizing the gravity of their actions. "You just ended your own careers," Harlow said, his tone cold and final. "Delta doesn't breed cowards who prey on their own. You're done here." Within hours, an investigation was launched. Witnesses came forward, and security footage from training confirmed everything. What shocked everyone wasn't just the assault, it was how quickly and decisively the commander acted. The three soldiers were stripped of their ranks and escorted off base before sunset. For the first time in years, the base felt a shift, a silent acknowledgement that respect and discipline were not negotiable. Meanwhile, Emily was summoned to Harlow's office. She expected interrogation, maybe even blame. Instead, he stood up when she entered. "You held your ground, Specialist. That's what a real soldier does," he said. On his desk sat a commendation form, her name at the top. "You're being nominated for the Distinguished Conduct Medal," he continued. "And I want you to start training with my medevac team. Delta needs soldiers like you." Emily's throat tightened. For the first time, she felt seen not as a token, but as a warrior. The men who thought they could break her had instead built her legend. Weeks later, during another joint drill, Emily led a live rescue simulation, this time with Delta operators under her command. The same soldiers who had doubted her now followed her lead without hesitation. Rumors of what happened that day spread far beyond Fort Bragg. Not as gossip, but as a story of accountability and courage. It became a quiet legend among the ranks the day a medic stood tall, and a commander drew the line. Colonel Harlow's swift justice sent a message that rippled through every base and barracks, that strength in uniform was not defined by gender, but by honor. As for Emily, she never forgot that moment in the dirt, surrounded by silence and fear. It became her fuel. Years later, she would become the first female Delta medic to lead a field extraction in live combat, saving 6 soldiers under fire. When asked later what kept her going that day, she simply said, "Because once, someone believed I was worth protecting, and I decided to prove them right." Like a video and subscribe to the channel Story Sphere.